Moment, realizing that everyone's just staring at a lip right now, so I'm going to have to change this anyway. Hello, Facebook. Please bear with me. We are working out some technical details that are mostly just, me planning poorly. So thanks for bearing with. So I would like to, okay, this would also help if the camera's actually on me. So I am actually live. Hi. So I am just trying to make things really quick. Would you like me to switch off really quick since we are doing a technical thing here? There we go. So hello. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Diana Rachel. I'm author of Urban Magic: A Guide for the City Witch and the upcoming book Hex Twisting Counter Magic Spells for the Irritated Witch. I also happen to be one of the friendly readers available to you through Elements, both at Kalamazoo and Marcellus, if you would ever like to stop in and book me or one of our other absolutely fabulous readers that are all experienced and will be fairly straightforward with you. Important. So those of you that tuned in the last time I did the show, I did give a very general overview of smudging and smoke cleansing from to some degree from perspectives of Native people that are in my life that I've spoken to about these practices. Now, the plant that gets used the most for both smudging and smoke cleansing in the United States is white sage. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about that. And there's enough stuff that I want to share with you that I actually wrote it down, but I didn't want to do the teleprompter thing because I wanted to leave room for questions if people had them, even if I may not be able to answer myself. So I want to talk first because I know I went over this at the other show, but I'd like to make sure that it's emphasized again. I want to talk first about smudging, why we are not calling it smudging in these circumstances. Smudging is a practice, and it is not a single practice, it is several practices among different Native American tribes. Native American culture is not monolithic, it is hundreds of cultures all at once. There are 5 million full-blooded Native Americans alive in the United States, so we need to quit talking about them like we're dead people. They're dead people, they're not. And they've been waving, going, we can see you! So we need to stop some stuff. Thank you. And there are 528 federally recognized tribes active in the US. Those are only the ones that are federally recognized. There are several still trying to gain recognition. So yes, they're alive. They are a large population, and given some of the history, there's some things that need to be kept in mind. So smudging, it is taught as a tribal or family tradition. It usually involves sage and other plants, a series of prayers that could actually begin from the growth of the plants, or if it is a wild plant, it is an ongoing relationship that is specific to that tribe or that nation or that family. So smudging is a very specific set of rituals that most people, when you're going through burning sage, that is not what you're actually doing. And it's fine that you're not doing that. If you have a relationship with the sage, it's going to work with you just fine anyway. But you do need to have that relationship to get the full benefit of the plant. So with that established, yay, I do want to give a little bit of history as to why people have very strong feelings about this. And part of this is that until 1978, it was illegal for a Native American to perform a smudging ceremony or practice anything from a Native American religion, anything at all. And this was going on since the 1860s when President Ulysses S. Grant decided to establish Indian schools, and the actual motto was kill the Indian, save the man. So it was intentionally to try to kill Native American culture. Now, these indigenous retraining schools still exist, not as many in the United States because people have started calling it out and breaking it down. They do still exist in Russia, and it is now creating a cultural knowledge crisis. So yeah, this is still a thing, and because this is still an active form of oppression, co-opting the ceremonies or even co-opting the language for it is extremely problematic because it actually is part of destroying those cultures and that knowledge base that really they're fighting so hard to preserve. So with that understood, what people on the New Age and pagan side of spirituality, and that is me, what we do is not smudging. What we do is smoke cleansing. And I usually recommend a sealant in addition to white sage. I usually don't use the plant alone either, but there's several different ways you can approach this. And If it's not practiced without full connection of where the plant came from, what the medicine, what the actual physical body medicine of the plant is, and what the spiritual applications are, you don't get as much out of it as you can. And this is why you hear conflicting reports of sage is like bleach, and or my experience with sage is I realized that when I moved to California, I was using a completely different type of white sage than I thought I was using. This is the thing I learned myself this week. Is for me, sage used to be a two-part plant that would brush out negativity, brush out lesser negative spirits, and call in more positive spirits. I also found out that sage will also tick off certain spirits, but that's a whole other conversation for another time around October when we talk about hauntings. So, what we're trying to do is usually establish good vibes or a general cleansing. So, what I found out is that the species in California, there is a species of white sage that is the most popular, that sells the highest, and that is Salvia apiana jepsen. It only grows in Southern California and little bits of Mexico. And what's been happening is that there has been some over aggressive harvesting that isn't even necessary to the plant. But we'll get into that a little bit later. The other type that is much more common, that is considered a secure plant in the United States, is Artemisia ludovichiana. And so that is white plain sage. So the California sage and the plain sage, the plains white sage, the plain states white sage, are two completely different plant genus. They're different plants entirely, but what they do medicinally is almost identical. What they do magically is not. So things I have learned both from practice and from going a little bit nuts with some of the goodies that I found, which I will be sharing. I will be sharing the sources with you later on this evening after I get home and, make sure my kids don't eat my kneecaps. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about is the white sage in the plains that the Plains Indians use, the white sage that is common here, that was used both for cleansings and for cursings. The California white sage is almost exclusively used for cleansings, for menstrual regulation, and also I had a whole list here. And it was also used for stomach disorders. And they can both be used that way a little bit, but you will find as we get into the other sages in the future that there's others that work a little bit better for that, because both of these plants, what they have most in common that's most important is the native ceremonies. They can induce sweating. They can be used to break a fever. They can be used to cleanse the blood through cleansing toxins. So they were used in sweats. If you've ever accidentally hotboxed yourself with white sage smoke, you know all about the sweating. We have all done this at least once. This is one of the reasons, not the only reason, but one of the reasons you need to open a window. So one of the things that I want to talk to you about that's very important right now is because of the overharvesting in California. What's been happening is companies from China and other corporations have been coming on to public land where the sage grows wild, and they've been almost completely razing the plants, which, since some of that so-called public land is actually native land and not public land, one, that's not cool. On top of it, you can only take a little bit less than half of the plant or you destroy the plant. So something that could offer leaves for decades to come is now being completely eliminated. So that's not good. And there is no reason to do this. There is no reason to be purchasing from suppliers that are fundamentally stealing like this. And they are also doing horrible things to the environment in the process, because there's several plants and animals that depend on the sage for habitats and for balancing and for a sort of medicine that is specific to the ecology of that area. So one of the things about both the salvia and the artemisia is that they are super easy to propagate. Almost anybody can grow them. They are very happy in pots. They take very little attention. You can forget to water them and they'll forgive you or go, oh, thank God I'm not getting watered too much. So if possible, if you're going to use white sage, what you need to do is make sure that you're either getting it from a native supplier who practices the collection in a sacred way, or from someone who does the greenhouse supply, because really the only ethical way to obtain these plants outside of native society is to grow them yourself or find people who grow them in greenhouses. And I do really encourage you to do deep dive research. I kept finding more and more stuff, and I'm a huge plant nerd. So there was a lot more to find, and I don't want to like keep you here all night. But I did want to talk a little bit, finish this off a little bit with what you can do to connect to a plant. I'm going to step away from the notes because it's kind of throwing me in the moment. But when you want to connect to a plant, what you do is, ideally I tell people to start by growing it. If you know a plant from the point it's a baby, you're going to know it pretty well. That doesn't always work for everybody. So what I suggest is you take a little bit of the plants, and if it will let you, you hold it in your hand and you just sit and you kind of breathe with it and listen to it. You put a little bit in your gums and see how it reacts with your body. And if you get tingling, take it out. It's probably an allergic reaction. And yeah, things you're allergic to are not your allies. That's kind of how that works. So take your time. What happens is you keep going back to the plant and sitting with it, and then using it, start with a tea or a wash and see how you react to it, and pause, and it's a conversation. So if you take some in your hand and you take it and you think about how it was with roots, and you hold it up, I would say actually between the solar plexus and the heart, because it's partly a power thing, but partly a heart-centered thing. And you breathe with it, imagine the roots, and imagine what it goes through in its growth, life, and death cycle. And stop, and then stop. What you do is you stop forcing your imagining, and you step back, and you kind of let whatever movie it wants to show you play out in your head, or you may hear sounds or singing if that's how you process information. You may feel certain things on your skin. For example, if you do this with white sage, a lot of white sage is used as a skin remedy. So you may feel things on your skin because it's antiseptic. And that's both the artemisia and the salvia do this. So if you step back and breathe with it and let it guide how you get to know it, it's going to go a long way in developing that relationship, which comes in handy when it's the, okay, sage, are you going to work for this thing that I want, this vibe that I want to change, this thing I want to get out of my house? And if the white sage is looking at you going, nope, you're going to be able to hear the nope, and it may even be able to suggest something else that you use. So that's what I have. I am going to be posting my much more coherent notes tonight. I get a little too excited about the medicine nerding. And I will have the notes and sources tonight. So thank you so much for tuning in and taking the time. I really appreciate anyone who takes the time to watch these. I'm Diana. I am one of the many wonderful readers at Elements. I will be at Marcellus on Saturday if you would like to sit down with me for a consultation. And I am more than happy to nerd out on damn near any plant you want. So thank you so much and have a good night. Okay. Good night, Instagram. There we go. Okay.
Good job.
I hope so.
I was just looking it up, and in